Hey, what's going on, guys? The latest Road to Badlands Update 1 just landed on stable, and this one is worth paying attention to because it is doing a lot more than just smoothing out a few rough edges. The first thing that stands out is the new SCR17 stuff, because Bohemia really leaned into that here. On the Frostline side, you get the black version of the rifle, the black magazine, black buttstock, black precision buttstock, and black hollow sights. Then on the general game side, you get the tan versions of the same rifle setup, plus the Desert Camo Combat Backpack, Desert Camo Plate Carrier, the T65 helmet, and military caps in BDU, Desert, and Woodland variants. So this is not just a single weapon drop and a day off. It is a whole bundle that makes the game feel a little more equipped for that new setting they're building toward. If you like collecting gear, matching your kit, or just trying to put together something that actually looks like it belongs in the world instead of a random pile of loot, this update gives you more to work with. And that really is the big vibe of this whole patch. It is not just about, here is a gun, enjoy. It is about pushing the world toward Badlands in a way that feels gradual. You can see it in the new Nasdara related vehicle Rex too, with MTVR, Striker, and 3 off-road Jeep variants showing up. Those kinds of additions always do a lot for DayZ because they make the world feel less static. Even when you are just moving across familiar terrain, seeing a new wreck, a new military remnant, or some event tied to a specific region gives the map more identity. It tells you this is not just a generic survival sandbox. The game is in motion, and the world is changing around you. The female soldier infected variants are another nice touch, especially because they come in woodland and desert versions. That might sound like a small detail at first, but in DayZ, those little visual changes go a long way. They make the infected feel like they belong in the area instead of being copy-pasted everywhere. Same thing with the military caps. BDU, desert, woodland, all of that helps the equipment pool feel broader and more believable. It is the kind of update where even players who are not chasing the new rifle immediately can still log in and notice the world feels fresher just from the amount of new visual variety sprinkled around. Then there is the new Brass Knuckles variant, which is one of those additions that sounds simple until you think about how much DayZ players actually enjoy weird little melee moments. It is not the biggest item in the patch by any means, but it fits the game's style perfectly. DayZ always works best when there are odd little tools in the mix that create stories. A new knuckle variant might not change the whole meta, but it absolutely gives people another thing to find, stash, show off, or use in a desperate close-range fight when everything has gone sideways. The Morse code leaflet item is another interesting one because it fits the atmosphere really well. DayZ has always been at its best when it leans into scavenged survival details instead of just raw combat upgrades. Anything that feels like it came from a larger story, a military route, or some lost communication chain makes the world more believable. That is especially true when the update is clearly planting seeds for Badlands. You can almost feel the game getting ready for a bigger regional identity, and items like that help sell the idea that there is a larger military and survival history behind what you are finding out in the field. The Nasdara Convoy server event is probably one of the most important additions for players who like activity in the world rather than just static loot runs. Events like that tend to create movement, and movement creates conflict, and conflict creates the kind of stories DayZ is famous for. A convoy event means people are going to be tracking routes, listening for signs of activity, rushing to intercept, or stumbling into the aftermath after someone else has already made a mess of things. That is exactly the sort of thing that keeps a survival game alive between major expansions. It gives people a reason to leave their usual routes and pay attention to what is happening around them. There are also a few changes that are easy to miss if you only skim the notes, but they matter more than they might seem. The main menu music is now Nasdara themed, which is a subtle shift, but a smart one. Music is one of the fastest ways to set expectations before you even load into a server. If the menu already sounds like the game is moving toward a harsher, desert-driven future, then the whole update feels more cohesive. It is a small detail, sure, but it helps the patch feel like part of a bigger plan instead of a random content dump. Another change worth mentioning is the wetness adjustment for Moto and Gorka helmets. Their maximum wetness was reduced from wet to damp, which means those helmets handle moisture a little differently now. That is the kind of balancing tweak that survival players should actually care about, because DayZ is full of those tiny systems that stack up over time. A change like this might not sound dramatic when you first hear it, but once you are out there, moving through rain, snow, or rough weather, it can affect how you manage your kit and how long certain pieces stay useful. The feedback links in the launcher and main menu now point to the new feedback tracker, which is a pretty practical change. It makes reporting issues a bit cleaner and keeps player reports more organized. That kind of thing never gets the same excitement as a new gun or new event, but it is the sort of behind-the-scenes improvement that helps the game keep getting better without making people jump through extra hoops just to say something is broken. Now for the fixes, because there are some good ones here. The geyser issue in Frostline has been cleaned up, where some geysers sometimes did not play the secondary eruption particle and sound. That is a nice example of a fix that improves atmosphere immediately. DayZ depends heavily on sound, timing, and environmental cues, so when a system like that is missing part of its effect, you feel it even if you cannot always explain why. Getting that corrected helps the world feel more alive and more consistent. There is also a client crash fix related to a specific asset configuration problem. Those kinds of crashes are always annoying because they can feel random to players. And random crashes are the sort of thing that can make a session go from fun to frustrating. And so any cleanup there is welcome. Same story with the stamina threshold issue, where the game sometimes was not reflecting recently dropped items correctly. That is the sort of bug that can mess with how the game feels moment to moment, especially when you are trying to manage weight and movement under pressure. The torch temperature fix is another one that should matter in actual play. Running with a lit torch could decrease character temperature, which is the opposite of what you would expect and the opposite of what you want when you are trying to survive. That has been corrected now, and it should make cold weather runs feel a little more reliable. DayZ has always been a game where survival systems are only fun when they behave in a way that makes sense, so these practical repairs are doing real work, even if they do not sound exciting on first read. There was also a terrain clipping fix for characters stuck under base building objects, which is the kind of bug that can go from annoying to disastrous depending on where and when it happens. If your character can end up in a broken position because of the environment, that can ruin a whole run, especially in a game where losing momentum matters so much. The ladder in water heat comfort bug got fixed too, where characters on a ladder in water could gain max heat comfort. That is one of those weird edge case issues that probably produce some very strange moments in game, so it is good to see it sorted out. For official Sakal servers, there was a launcher issue preventing them from being joined, and that is obviously a big deal because anything that blocks server access can completely ruin the update experience, so that repair is important just from a basic stability and access standpoint. The console-specific fixes are especially nice for people on Xbox. Party chat and game chat were not playing nicely together, which is a huge quality of life problem in a game like this, because communication matters so much. If you cannot hear people properly, the whole social side of the game gets clunky fast. Key bindings not saving in the Microsoft Store version was another frustrating one, since players should not have to reconfigure controls every time they come back. The Xbox build no longer requiring a controller to be plugged in for mouse and keyboard to function is also a big practical improvement. And zeroing hotkeys not responding on keyboard should make input feel a lot more dependable overall. There is also a modding fix in here that will matter to creators and server admins. Entity AI.register net sync variable float had an issue with quantized float variables where the combination of range and precision needed more than 32 bits of encoding. That sounds very technical because it is, but the practical takeaway is simple enough. Better sync behavior means fewer weird mod issues, and fewer weird mod issues means smoother custom content and fewer head-scratching moments for people building on top of the game. For a game like DayZ's, modding support is a huge part of the ecosystem, so even technical fixes like this have a real impact. And then you have the notes telling players to verify the integrity of the local game cache after downloading, defragment an HDD if needed, and check the support FAQ if anything goes wrong. That's a pretty standard post-update advice, but it is still worth hearing because big updates can sometimes leave behind corrupted files or odd performance hiccups. So if someone updates and something looks off, those steps are the first things to try. What makes this update interesting is that it feels like a bridge. It is not just a pile of fixes and not just a content tease either. It is both. It gives players new gear, new world flavor, and a clearer sense that Nasdara is becoming part of DayZ's identity, while also cleaning up a bunch of problems that would absolutely get in the way of enjoying the game. That balance is what makes an update like this feel worthwhile. You log in, you notice the new stuff, you feel the world shifting a bit, and at the same time, the game runs cleaner than before. That is the kind of patch that keeps people around because it gives you something new without making the rest of the experience feel messy. So yeah, this one is definitely more than a throwaway maintenance patch. Between the new SCR17 gear, the desert-themed equipment, the infected variants, the Convoy event, the menu music change, and the collection of important fixes across PC, Xbox, and modding, it is clear that Bohemia is laying groundwork while still taking care of day-to-day problems. And for DayZ players, that is usually the best kind of update because it means the game is moving forward in ways you can actually feel the moment you load in.